All right, folks, welcome back to Mike and Maurice's Mind Escape. We have episode number 167. We are going to be discussing meditation and metaphysics with our guest, Brian Scott. I'm sure some of you will know Brian. We've had him on a couple times before. He runs the channel, The Reality Revolution, on YouTube. They do he does guided meditations and different videos on esoteric topics and metaphysics and all sorts of wonderful things. He's also the author of the book, The Reality Revolution. So check that out. I have the links down below the video on both of those. So check out his stuff. And while you're doing that, why don't you head on over to indrasweb.org and sign up to get an alert when the app goes live. This is the app that we created. Pretty soon, we'll be going live with it, but you'll get an alert if you sign up. And why don't you head on over to Patreon at patreon.com/Mind Escape Podcast. I actually just connected it to our Discord channel. So if you are in Discord, go check us out on there. We have all sorts of new tiers. I have different titles for each of the tiers. And we're going to do this cool thing coming up called Secret Episodes, where we're going to do secret episodes. We're not going to release any information on who the guest or the topic or anything. It'll be like a secret track, like back in the day if you would listen to CDs and there was that extra track at the end, something similar to that. So check us out on Patreon and Discord if you have not already. So, all right. Welcome back on the show, Brian.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course.
All the way back, you were the first interview I ever did before when I got my channel started. The first person I ever interviewed with was you. So I'm honored to come back.
Dude, I remember when you started your channel, you had 100 subscribers. Dude,
Yeah.
You have like 250 subscribers, 250,000 subscribers, something insane.
And you helped me out. You showed me some,
I don't know how much we did,
how to set up my tags on my videos. You were super nice and helpful. And so I owe you some of my success for sure, man. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, I mean, I was just being a nice guy, but I appreciate the sentiment. But yeah, seriously though, I do remember when you did get it started. Now you're rolling. You've got some people paying attention, which is awesome. And you're active on Facebook as well. If anybody's interested, he has a group on Facebook as well. I thought we'd talk a little bit about meditation because you do guided meditations on your channel. And all these, cool videos to help people relax and try and lucid dream and all sorts of different things. So I wanted to ask you, when you do these meditations and you're walking people through it, you kind of start out and you do like a little bit of voiceover stuff, but then you just kind of like let it flow and let the music go and let the person acclimate to stuff. Is that something that you cultivated as you were kind of going along? Like, is that something, or did you have that in mind before you started doing this?
Well, if you go through the 130 some odd meditations that I've done, you'll find a lot of differences. When I do a meditation, it's not like a normal podcast. It really does feel like a piece of art. I don't know going in what it's going to turn out like. I have a sort of idea of what I want to paint or where I want to take people. It's different than me just reading some material or going over stuff, because it's like a kind of an adventure, a journey. I'm taking people on it. So each time I do it, it's sort of an experiment. The one time I'll spend a bunch of time on relaxing, and then I might have another where we only spend a couple minutes on it. And so, I compare notes after. It's exciting. It's nice. When I do a meditation, I get a chance to get some feedback. I learned neurolinguistic programming a long time ago, and that used to be a primary business of mine. I'm a master practitioner in NLP, so I use NLP techniques a lot, and I'm always experimenting. Meditation, it's kind of almost a meditation / hypnosis in some cases. In some cases, it's not. Especially those sleep meditations. So, it's an 8-hour how do you do it? How do you fall asleep? It's like what is the best way? So every time I'm doing it, I'm learning and experimenting, but I definitely don't have like one modality that I use. People will notice some trends, things that really work that I return to quite a bit. For sure.
Yeah, I like the setup. I mean, because I do listen to frequencies and music while I meditate too. Sometimes I'll throw on your stuff, if I am trying to fall asleep or do something. Sometimes I'll throw on I think it's Meditative Mind. It's a
Oh yeah, great channel. Some great music.
there's some track on there that has like 25 million views that I've probably given 10,000 to because I
Me
listen to that.
too. There's a
Yeah.
couple that like really focus on the third eye, and you can feel some frequencies that are combined in some of those channels, like that one, that are
Hmm.
just that are amazing. They
Yeah,
really are.
I think the one I'm talking about is like 528 hertz, I believe, is the one that I
Right.
listen to normally. And that one kind of is cool if you're meditating laying down, kind of maybe gonna about to do a lucid dream, something like that.
Right.
But yeah, I like your style with that a lot. Now, recently I've seen a lot of videos on these like older generation, people from like the 20s and the 30s and the late
Hmm.
1800s and stuff like that. And not even, I know you do some Manly P. Hall stuff. I know you do some esoteric stuff. But what's up with like the Neville Goddard? I see a lot of stuff on that. What's up with some of those people? Like, is there something about their work or their insights that you gravitate towards?
Well, really, the channel is sort of an ongoing classroom in creating reality, utilizing consciousness. So when you go back and you really start delving into consciousness research and meditation, those kind of things, there's several major periods, and one of them was the New Thought era that sort of occurred in the 1900s to 1930s, and Neville Goddard was sort of a part of it. And then there's sort of a post-New Thought era where you get the Anthony Norvell, the Parker Publishing Group, some of those amazing books that you'd find that sort of it's had different copyright style where they would sell like magic tricks and magic spells and different things, but there was some really fundamental teachings inside of these. Some of it is copyright; they're easier for me to read. Um, but in doing that, I've found some just amazing books that have been sort of hidden that hold deep truths, have very very interesting information that slowly expand like an onion the layers of what I'm learning. As with anything, when you just choose to learn a lot about a particular topic, you're always going to find more and more information. It's just how it works, right? So
Right.
that's the phase that that channel has gone through. Is Orison Swett Marden, Ralph Waldo Trine. Some of these authors were truly, absolutely amazing. One of the really interesting ones, Joseph Benner. If you ever read about the history of Elvis, there's a period at the end of Elvis's life where he's like crazy about
Mm.
this book that like everybody's got to read it. He was buying up hundreds of copies, just handing them out to people, going to the restaurant, just, people didn't understand. It's kind of like, so you go and read this book and it's like game changer. The book is it's like a voice that's speaking directly to you, really transcends time and space and communicates the idea of God and godhood and your relationship to it in such a unique way. And so, as I read these, they expand on it. One of the really interesting authors that I've recently started to explore is Walter Russell. He was sort of a scientist, physicist, also a philosopher who would communicate with Nikola Tesla and talks about the science, the secret of light and what light really is and how light works in manifesting matter. And so, as I go along, one author leads to another, and they all kind of sort of tie together. So that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm doing with it. When I sit down to do an episode, a lot of times I have no idea what I'm going to do an episode on.
Okay.
I turn on the switch, and next thing you know, next thing I'm finding this amazing thing. So
I like
it's never
that.
really a plan or anything. It's just always something. Just this is what I want to read next. This is kind of this, and a lot of times I haven't read it before I sit down, and then I'm suddenly starting to read it and go, oh my gosh, So
Yeah, I like that style. That's why we do a live show. I mean, we come from the school of live, jam band,
right,
Fish, Grateful Dead, and we try and
right,
carry that element to here. I mean, we have guests on, but I don't talk about what we might have. What I do is I'll say this is the title of the episode. Let's riff off of that kind of a thing.
right,
Like so you have some sort of vehicle to kind of play
yeah.
off of. But I like what you do in the sense like what you're talking about, like it's kind of off the cuff, it's just from your personal knowledge and your reading and all that stuff. Do you think though, you mentioned, actually I wanted to bring this up too, you mentioned the copyright stuff and like there's certain things, obviously older works don't have a copyright on them, or the
Right.
copyright wore off or whatever, the time wore down on that. Do you think, like, I see a lot of people reading old books and stuff because you can kind of get away with it because there
You
is no
can.
copyright. So when you do that, have you found that actually, that I think that draws a lot of people, right? Because people want to hear some of these old books, but they don't
They do.
necessarily know how to get them or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, a lot of times the people don't know about these books. There's sort of a gray period between in the 1930s to about 1960 where the author, once the copyright expired, they had to send in a letter notifying them of renewing the copyright. Just this bizarre bureaucratic thing that they stopped doing. Bunch of authors didn't do that. And so there's like hundreds of amazing books. Somebody that owns a bookstore, I find these books. These books are amazing. And they're just sitting there unpublished because people don't really know to find, as I have learned, to find out if this person sent the letter. You have to go through like New York library and find the record of renewals and like scan through page by page to see if they renewed it. You can even hire people to find out. So there's this sort of gray period. You know what
Mm.
I mean? And so there are these absolutely amazing books that are in that little phase that go beyond the old ones that you can find on Gutenberg, and that the later ones. And so, as I've done this, I've just discovered there's like thousands of books
Right.
that are just sitting there, and it's really, really unfortunate. There's some techniques and teachings, philosophies, ideas that come from this stuff that needs to be explored further. They were onto something, when they were with these teachings. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
For
shout out
instance,
to Sean Cahill. He wanted me to tell you that he absolutely adores your channel and appreciates what you're doing with the
thanks, Sean.
meditation stuff.
Appreciate that.
And yeah, so I mean, you and I both talk a lot of, we've gone back and forth and even
Yeah.
texted about some like esoteric works and stuff like that. When you look at a lot of the older stuff, have you thought about even going older? Like,
Oh yeah.
like, we're talking ancient style
Oh
texts
yeah.
or,
I'm down for anything. I'm definitely going to read the Emerald Tablets at some point,
mm.
if that's old or not.
Right.
But then I have an
Well, the
ongoing
Emerald
almost
tablets
petition.
are real. It's the question is, I think a lot of people get confused, is the Emerald tablets of Thoth. Um,
Right.
is that aspect of it
Right.
real?
But
But
it's still it to
the Emerald
me,
tablets are where we get as
it's
above, so below. It's an
amazing reading.
alchemical text. Yeah,
Right? It's an
absolutely.
amazing reading. Something but well, I have an ongoing petition because I had done an episode. I've done about 2 or 3 episodes on the Book of Revelation, and a lot of people they want me to read the Book of Revelation. I
Mm.
mean, I will. I love some of that the Kabbalion. One reason I haven't read that, which is one of my favorite books, is it's so many people have read it. It's just so many versions of it on YouTube. But I'll read that, and the older texts are just as interesting as the
Hmm.
newer ones. Um,
I'm actually reading that right now, or rereading it
one
right now.
I read I've started reading on the channel some books by Guy Ballard, who wrote as Godfrey, Ray Godfrey. He wrote under the Saint Germain
Mm.
teachings, which is sort of it's really fascinating. This guy that lived near Mount Shasta completely could be. It's similar to Carlos Castaneda, right?
Hmm.
Where he just goes and meets this person. You don't know if it's true or not, but he meets Saint Germain and describes the history of the Earth in this book called Unveiled Mysteries that I started. This is 1933,
Mm.
and he's talking about showing. It takes him inside one of the Grand Tetons, claiming that deep inside the Grand Tetons is like one of the locations, and he shows him like what appears to be a hologram of the history using the Akashic records of Atlantis, of Mu, of the Sahara Desert, of the Gobi Desert, of all these old civilizations and records that have been kept so that they wouldn't be lost, knowing in the history of how Atlantis, all the different kind of destruction. These are things that interest me. These old books, they may not be true,
Hmm.
but there seems to be when you read them, and I'll preface that when I read something, hey, this doesn't have to be true. Let's
Right.
share this information, and then you find there's a thread that runs through it, that there has to be some truth coming from it.
Right.
And so I'm always, it's really important. I'm always reading this stuff as not, this is the absolute truth. I'm not telling everybody, hey, this is the truth. I'm saying I'm a student. And the only way I can learn is gather more information. Some of this information may be wrong. It might be biased, might be racist, which but I'll learn more about it. And so
Right.
I want to learn. So I'll read it all, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, I mean, you got to be some of the older texts, and you and I have talked about it. It's like stuff comes up that is, you know, racist or unsavory at this point, or at very
Right.
least, ignorant. So we got to, you
Some
know,
of the old occult texts, when they were trying to describe the early history of Earth, spent too much time on the races.
right,
There was irrelevant discussion of how the races evolved on the earth and where they came from, and it just comes off sort of racist. And when I've read some of that, I just skip it. You
right.
know what I mean? It's not important. You
Well,
know what I
that's a
mean?
whole different discussion too, right? The
Yeah,
whole separating the art from the artist and things
right,
that are, can you separate this chunk if there is some truth over here and then this other
right,
part's bad or disgusting or, whatever the case may be. Because it's not even just about that either. There's other parts too where like, what was this? Like what,
right,
there's a lot of different facets, but this is how we learn, right? This is how
right,
we grow. And, obviously if you see it you got to point it out and say this is not cool or this is whatever, and you said you skip it, whatever. But
right.
I think that in this day and age, we have to be able to read some of these texts and understand and learn from them. But so moving on, I do want to talk a little bit about meditation. So do you have like a personal meditation? I know you said you like mix it up a lot, but do you have like a regimen? Is there like a time of day? Is there a style you prefer, or is it just kind of all random?
It really depends on how you define meditation, right? Because I think we're always in a phase of meditation. We're in our mind thinking, constantly, but dedicated meditation, I have several different kinds that I do. I try to, at a minimum, get 24 minutes a day. That's always my minimum. Like if I didn't meditate for 24 minutes, then I kind of failed in many ways. I can find some way. And so I've gone through a lot. I've just recently created a class, and I've kind of treated meditation. If you ever did P90X, remember those
No, but
workout
I do
programs,
remember
right?
watching it on
Those
TV.
the reason those were so great is it changed it up. It's not boring. It's a new workout every day. You had a map, you had a calendar that showed, hey, this is the workouts you're going to do this week. These are the workouts you. So I started with my meditations, sort of creating like a 90-day program. As I had found, one meditation doesn't do it. There's sort of a sort of evolution that occurs with meditation in terms of reality creation. There's a period of sort of incubation where you're accessing the quantum field and sort of letting go of what your concept is of the world, and just you're not creating, you're not visualizing, you're just being. And at first, I also emphasize silent meditation, which is important. They all
Mhm.
have a part. There are some meditation fanatics that are very particular about their kind of meditation, and they will get angry with you when you say, oh, this is meditation. No, you are not
Right.
doing meditation, okay?
Yeah.
And you need to sit a certain way, and you're not allowed to think. You can only breathe a certain way. I have a playlist on my channel which I recommend, is how to meditate, and I've gone and gathered Alan Watt, Neville Goddard, and several different famous authors, and how they described what meditation is and what it should do. Many will only define it as you creating in your mind.
Hmm.
Some will define it as you escaping and listening and receiving. So really, the definition of what you want for your meditation. When I use meditation, um, prayer in many ways is you talking to God, the universe, your higher power. It's a sort of communication, and meditation in a lot of ways is a listening. So at first, it's turning off and sort of opening myself up to listen to what's going on. And as I did that, I've experimented with a bunch of different styles, but the most extreme is wake up in the morning, do a meditation midday, do an 8-hour sleep meditation, which is not really meditation, but is a form of of accessing the subconscious at night. And doing that on a regular basis, uh, it's sort of like a workout where you kick it into high gear and you lift heavy for a week. And in some ways, I think that that's what we're doing. And so I'm constantly experimenting. I get bored super easy.
Mm.
There's a part of me, hey, that was great, but I don't want to do that again. I want to take this to another level. And so I'm constantly experimenting with breathing techniques and visualizing techniques and different things when I'm doing meditation. A lot of times it's probably not meditation. It might be self-hypnosis on some level,
Mm-hmm.
from what I'm doing. And so when I'm coaching, I'm always recommending that you're at least getting some silent meditation. Going into the silence is fundamentally important. And so a lot of people may get distracted by doing online or YouTube videos. And so there's a place for everything. And so I've tried to design my meditation. The fundamental key with my channel is not to be the be all end all. It's to make meditation fun.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people just simply don't meditate, and that is probably the greatest problem. I'll talk to somebody, I don't have time. You got 5 minutes. 5 minutes of meditation is huge.
Right.
So what I have found after starting out, having all these big ideas about what meditation is and studying advanced yoga techniques, is that a lot of that stuff doesn't matter. People will be led to the right way of meditating naturally. But my thing is to make it fun. I want to make it fun. I want to make it enjoyable. I want to give people that, hey, this is something like sitting down and playing a video game. I'm going to sit down and do a meditation because it's fun. Maybe I can see the beginning of the universe, or travel to the Big Bang, or
Right.
travel outside of my body, or imagine certain futures, affect my own reality, reprogram my subconscious mind. I can do those kind of things. But
Yeah.
it's like art. There's a million different kinds of art, and there's no right way to do it.
Yeah, I had a weird thing happen 2 days ago. I was meditating on top of my bed. I have my own techniques. I think I've gone over it on one of the episodes
Some
we did.
Egyptian techniques, you said, yeah.
Yeah, like, well, it was my grandfather who was like an inventor and like visionary. He had some techniques written down, and I took some of those and kind of implemented some other things, and
Right.
kind of have my but he was fascinated with ancient Egypt, and he felt like he was maybe reincarnated or something along those lines, or those that's where he associated himself with. But I think that when I do meditate, it's very interesting what happens. It's because it's different every time for the most part. There are some consistent things, but it does kind of go in different ways. But 2 days ago, I was meditating on the top of the bed, listening to the 528 hertz as I was zoning out. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
took a puff here, puff there, and I'm laying back, and I'm getting into it. And then probably like 20 or 30 minutes in, I had this it felt like a few minutes, but it probably was only a few seconds, where I was in a different position. I was on the door was closed, and I was on the other side of the room, in my living room, facing towards the bedroom, and I was in the bedroom, but I was in the other room. It was the weirdest thing. I was sitting in a spot where I always sit, like on my couch. But for a couple seconds, I felt like I was in that room. It was just a really weird thing. It was almost like out of body. I guess if there is like a many worlds thing going on, it could be, I don't know have you seen that show Devs yet? It's on FX. There's weird things that happen where they show like all the different timelines overlapping each other. It kind of felt like that. It kind of felt like
Right.
some timelines, like maybe, I don't know. It was just really weird.
It sounds to me like an out-of-body experience,
Yeah.
and that can be more scientifically verified. You go read Robert Monroe. It's a legitimate thing. It's not that you're leaving your body. You're never leaving your body.
Mm-hmm.
You're never leaving your body. As I started to study remote viewing, I started to better conceptualize what was happening when I would have out-of-body experiences. As I think you can leave your body. It's different when you have these situations where your point of awareness is outside of where you're at in your
Like
body.
near death people might be leaving their body.
Right.
If
There's a
anybody is, I would
quantum
say.
field that we access that is all time and all space. We may access it when we do certain, DMT and other things, but you can access it through meditation, even for a little bit. If you do, you can access these other variances. You can go into the room and see what's happening in the room at this time. Your level of your focal point of your consciousness goes outside of your eyes, mind, and body, and you can enter into other locations, and observe it. They argue, and I have an episode of CIA where they talk about this stuff. That the government does this all the time. That they have people that are scanning using remote viewing, getting information for intelligence purposes, and the reason they're doing it is it works.
Hmm.
It can be verified.
Yeah, there's
Um,
that documentary, Third Eye Spies, about Russell Targ and Hal
mhm,
Puthoff, and you know,
right.
all
I
those
read
guys.
there's a CIA document, the Gateway process, that talks about using this, and he's just using hemisync technology, sort of sound technology that vibrates and connects the brain, and then using those different experiments, different frequencies in leaving the body. So, from what I've understood and experienced, I've had an astral experience where I've left my body, usually at night when I'm sleeping,
Hmm.
and there's like a silver thread that connects to my body, and it's different. And then I've also been able to scan the quantum field like they do in remote viewing. I have a remote viewing meditation where you can, if you follow those steps, you can try it. Most people just simply try to gain pranayama through a nostril breathing for about 10 minutes, and then
Hmm.
they sit there and they focus. Remote viewing is not very good if you're attached to anything. You have to be like the neutral observer from it. So if
Right.
you want to go check out your wife, you might not do a very good job of that because you're going to bring in your own opinions, ideas of whatever is going on. But if you do it and it's something that you don't know about or care about, or it's unimportant, then you can access people. There's the Farsight Institute. If you got to get some people on your channel, I'd love to watch you interview the people from the Farsight Institute, because they've
Okay.
gone back, and looked at famous things in history. Who built the pyramids? They've looked at Göbekli Tepe.
Gobekli Tepe.
Göbekli Tepe. They've actually gone and
That's
viewed that.
Maurice's favorite to say too.
I can't ever say it, but they've gone and viewed what it was, who
Right.
was building it. Like they have an episode, I have a video of, where they're discussing the characters. Now, when you watch these people remote view, they're not sitting meditating. They're just kind of like, and then they're drawing on a whiteboard, like, and I can see the clouds, I can see a silver. They're just going through information that's coming in, and it's sort of a process of learning how to access information coming into your brain and distinguishing it from your own imagination, something separate.
Hmm.
Those are things that I learned through meditation. And so, we go back to the idea of what is meditation. Well, there's everything is meditation. That might not be a meditation, you know what I'm saying? But
Right.
it totally, all of it fascinates me. I'm absolutely fascinated by consciousness on every single level. And something magical happens when we close our eyes and go within, if it's a
Hmm.
meditation or not, when we learn the process of how our subconscious, which is essentially this God being within our body that is so powerful, that beats our heart, that functions all these different parts of our body, that does everything.
Hmm.
And if we access this infinite intelligence that's within us, then suddenly your life will start changing. And so that was one of the reasons I started my channel. I would meet people that are having a really hard time in their lives, as I had, and I could see it was just something simple as just the way they were thinking, their
Hmm.
worldview, and the way they were thinking, the constant stream of thoughts had put them into this really tough situation. And how do I get somebody to change that if I can see that, And all you can do is teach meditation, and learn about it myself and expand on it. Uh,
Yeah, how
so
I was gonna ask you, that's like a fine line too, because I see channels that kind of do what you do, but they fall victim of um, some of the crazies coming out and playing to the crazies, if you know what I'm saying. Like, how do
they're crazy.
you, how do you keep like, look, you do help people. I see people on your forums and, oh, thank you, and there's a lot
Right.
of people interacting, and how do you separate that, or how do you keep true
Yeah.
to like the content and keep things positive, and not let it get to that like weird place where people are kind of looking to you for like all the answers, or you are some sort of not deity, but you know what I'm saying, like some
Yeah,
sort of
it's really interesting. If you get if you have HBO Max,
yeah,
I
that
found
new
it super.
Heaven's Gate.
I went and watched the Heaven's Gate documentary,
We're gonna do an episode on that. That's
and
actually
he's
super
talking when
interesting.
I talk about the law of one, or even you talk about Urantia. He's talking about something similar to what I talk about,
Hmm.
and I could see people getting sold on it, this belief, and it's so easy for just to switch that path. Also, outside of just the deity, the deification of the guru, which never works. Um, Beyond that, there's something about spirituality, particularly this sort of spirituality. Uh, it invites psyops from intelligence agencies. I saw, especially during the elections, I
Hmm.
saw the most amazing things. Really, people that I had respected spiritually that are started just spouting off stuff clearly that had come from psychological operations or disinformation that they received. And a lot of people in the spiritual community are gullible to that because they're open to these new ideas. Fortunately, I'm open to these ideas, but I'm a debater from college, so
Hmm.
I will always consider where it's coming from, and I have a certain process of filtering information that is important to me, and sort of understanding where, like, what the point of it is and what they're trying to accomplish.
Well,
And
do you think that like where you're like strong in that sense, like you are just trying to help people and not really, you don't have like a god complex, or you're not trying to start a cult or anything crazy like that. But do you think that that's because of your intentions, and that somebody that maybe doesn't have as good intentions or is just looking to make money or whatever the case may be, that's where that kind of stuff comes from? It's just like
it
we're
does
we're
time and
very
time again.
malleable. We're very malleable, like
We
our
are.
minds, you know.
Well, we see it all the time. We see people that have good intentions when they start.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a constant reminder for me. People that start out with good intentions, hey, I want to help some people out. They get the taste of the money and power and all that other stuff, and then they change.
Even
It,
Osho, that Wild
exactly.
Wild Country. I mean, he started
Right.
off like there was a lot of people that love his work and his early books and
Right.
revered him, and then boom, down the line, this guy's got 100 Rolls Royces, 2 jet planes,
Right.
taking drugs every
When
day. You know, so
when I was starting this, and I believe I have conversations with my higher self. It might be my subconscious or just some part of me, but I was had this desire. Hey, I want to have a popular channel. I want to teach these things, and I was constantly being warned, "You're not ready.
hmm.
You're not ready because of what will happen." I had gone through so many failures and struggles, and now when I look back on it, I kind of felt like I came to the place where I would start teaching this stuff at the right point, because I had been through some stuff in the past, and it wasn't all that stuff wasn't important to me. You couldn't. It was going to be very difficult to pay me off or push me a certain way. I even go to another. I think there are groups that try to push gurus out of the way. I think there's other forces, and I'm not speaking like them. I just sometimes it's an ongoing thing that
Hmm.
people that teach in the spiritual community become disconnected to what they were teaching at the beginning. And some people, they may be too young, or they get a taste of the wealth. It's
Right.
just one of those things. And then part of what I'm teaching on my channel a lot is part of that process of, I can use this wonderful technique now that I know how to do it to become abundant, to find financial wealth. And so a lot of times when I do that, you'll get people that'll post on the video, hey man, you're evil. All you want to do is go and just find money. It turns out it's all true. You were all about the money, Brian. So I do believe, as I've tried to teach it, that you can create a prosperity mindset and still work as in the service of others.
Hmm.
And you can do it because, as the science of getting rich, if the best way for me to help the most number of people is to find wealth. So there's always, I think, with even the best of us, a constant struggle when it comes to wealth and how it works, and the whole process and power and all of it. I think it's human nature. I think it's part of the human design, and hopefully, knock on wood, I don't change, but you never know.
Hmm.
These forces are like that. I'll just try to continue to go back to what I originally intended, and that was to raise consciousness, to teach about consciousness, and um, go from there. And I've told, if you ever see me starting to act like that, where starting a cold or I'm acting like I'm some deity, run, get the hell out of there, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, that's.
So
I mean, that's why I was asking because, like I said, there are people. That, I mean, you've seen it. You've seen it in the UFO community. You've seen it in the,
yes.
paranormal. You've seen it in the New Age. And I think the New Age one's is pretty popular now
One of
too.
the most the craziest examples, I think we might have texted about a few times, but I had mentioned it in my group the other day, is the David Wilcock example. This guy who's written some amazing books early on, clearly a very intelligent person, well documented research. Suddenly something happens. And then he comes out with this book where he's just talking about only himself with delusions of grandeur, talking about being the reincarnation of Edgar Casey. And it was like somebody else took over. It's like this other person, and now all of a sudden he's talking about the alliance and the cabal and using political metaphors, and everything has got a strategy, and he can sell you this special program for $1,000. And by the time people have got to that point, they look at him as a credible person who is clearly intelligent and talked about this, written books about stuff. So it happens to the best of us, because when you look at the early David Wilcock, he's not crazy. I don't know about Corey Good. That was just something else. But when you're talking about that, but that in the UFO community, that is a particular example. You know what I mean? I'm sure we're going to get some haters on this video, but
I mean, yeah, I don't. I mean, if you follow UFO Twitter, you know what's up. I don't even need to say anything more than that. So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, in terms of what's real and what's not is a very thin line too, because things that were, bullshit yesterday are now some sort of a truth today, and this super evolution, throughout time of, even look at like psychedelics were demonized and
Right.
part of the war on drugs and all that stuff. And now it's being pushed, through as medicine. And I'm, I can vouch for that myself, having my own experiences with mental health issues and using psychedelics. So I think that, yeah, I mean, you have to be careful, and you have to just do your research, do your homework. Don't just watch one YouTube video or two YouTube videos or just
Right.
one channel or two channels. Cross-reference things. Go back and forth. Look at things as, I don't know. You got to do your homework is what it comes down to, and there's not enough people doing that. It doesn't take that much time, but I understand
No.
people are busy. But at the same time, it's like if you're going to be interested in these things and participate in them, the very least you could do is actually look deeper into these topics and, that kind of a thing. When you
What is
look,
your opinion on Stephen Greer and in the
look, that CE5 that came out,
the CE5?
I like the idea of it. I like the idea of meditating and kind
Yeah.
of tuning into something greater in terms of like a UFO or some alien, something like that. I don't, there's it's kind of a polarized thing right now because you have, To the Stars Academy saying, let's watch out, let's be careful. We don't know what these things are capable of or what they're doing or their intentions or anything like that. And then you have Stephen Greer who kind of goes against that and says, oh, they're good and we're the ones that are bad, or there's some flaw within us. And, they're trying to help us, achieve this, it's been in the news lately, the Galactic Federation. And, with the guy,
Right.
I think the guy from Israel came out and said aliens are living among us, so, when you look at that, I personally think that, I mean, he's obviously used the freedom of information for some of his stuff, so there is some legitimacy to some of the stuff he says. In terms of like all these things, though, there's different narratives. So I guess it just depends on what narrative you're looking for. Do I think that people are going and taking pictures of aliens and capturing them, like in that documentary? Not necessarily, but like I said, I like the idea of like trying to meditate and make some sort of contact with the universe, with aliens, whatever it is.
Right. Well, yeah, it may not. Maybe it's just the use of the word alien.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, anything extra
We're
or
contacting
ultra.
intelligences that are beyond what we understand that we can access through meditation. It could be an alien. It could be just an intelligence that's always been on the earth, right?
Right.
We don't know, and maybe we heard it by defining it in terms of UFOs or extraterrestrial, right?
Right.
I don't know.
Well,
But
I
yeah,
try. I just try not to like poo-poo anything because what the
right.
hell do we know? You know, like unless it's
Exactly.
malicious, like we were just
Unless it's
talking about.
obvious.
Yeah,
A
unless
lot
it's
of times it's
obvious,
clearly
malicious.
purposeful disinformation or just wrong. But
Right.
yeah, I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say no to anything. I can believe it all, and it could
Right.
all be true at the same time,
And like anything else,
even
like you
with
mentioned too,
contradiction.
you could start out with the greatest intentions, and now there's documentaries and trips that cost money and things like that.
Right.
So it's like when things like that come up, I guess I get it. You're trying to make a living doing that, and maybe that's your passion. I don't, but it's again, the only problem I have with all of that is when you start intentionally misleading people or intentionally putting BS or fake pictures or fake whatever out there. That's when I get
Right.
a little cautious of things. But yeah, I think that if I were to pick what's going on with the stuff, I just follow the military stuff and like the official stuff, if that makes sense, because
Right.
all of the other, you know, things out there, yeah, I pay attention to it too, but I think that the gimbal video, the go fast, like that's tangible evidence. You have
Right.
David Fravor's accounts. Those are the things that I just really pay attention to in terms of like
Right.
that's what I can hang my hat on in terms of when I think about this kind of stuff. All the other stuff is interesting. I'll listen to it or watch it, but I'm not, it's
Yeah.
not,
I
it's
want
not
to talk about it. Like if
right.
somebody has some sort of a galactic cosmic view of what's going on, I will want to read everything, even if I don't necessarily believe it. If there's somebody talking about a galactic federation and they have hundreds of pages of how it works, I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
read
yeah.
every single page because even if it's not true, I want to know. I want to understand
Right.
that.
And that's the
Right?
most important thing, right? Is I like understanding how other people. What it comes down to is I like understanding how people think. I might not agree with Stephen Greer
Yeah.
and his techniques or whatever, but I want to know what he's doing. I want to know how did he arrive at where he came to, or how did this guy get there, or how are these people coming up with this? I just want to know, so I know to myself, is it bullshit to me, or is there something there, and
Right.
yeah, so I mean that's kind of how I just want to know. I'm able to deduct what's credible from just listening and watching things. I think you probably are too.
Right. One of the most credible things I've seen is channelings, originally by the same group that did the raw material and the Law of One, where they have like five or six people in a circle, and the being that they're channeling speaks through all of the different people, like moving on, and uses how when you can read a book, you can tell a certain writer wrote the book. You can tell by the syntax and the way they talk, and they can even go back and search writings to see if William Shakespeare wrote this. They have a way of looking at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a consistent voice. It's same as the CE5. They're probably using basically the same process. There's a consistent voice that's speaking out of all different people that has the same syntax, the same. Now, there could be explanations for that. But then when I start going back and looking other channeled materials and other information, they're consistent and they're talking about the same thing. And so then you start to build a sort of, an outline of different information that may be consistent or not. That's the best way we can do, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean it's all look. A lot of this stuff is speculation. A lot of it is speculation upon speculation upon speculation. And while there might be some anecdotal evidence, like you might be able to meditate and see some weird stuff or experience some weird stuff, but how do you bring that into the real world? Like, how does that equate to day-to-day consciousness? And like
right,
maybe they're just two different realms. Like maybe the other realm is infinite, imagination, and maybe this realm has limits, something like that.
right,
But that's the way I look at things, is like what can you take, whether it's psychedelics, meditation, lucid dreaming, near death experience, whatever it may be. How can you take the lessons or the insights learned from those experiences and implement them into day-to-day consciousness? And I truly believe some of my most innovative and truly original thoughts have come while under the influence of psychedelics, because they do something to you, and meditation
hmm
actually for that matter, but not as much as psychedelics. Psychedelics really, for me, take me out of the day-to-day consciousness and bring me into a different reality that I'm able to think differently,
Right.
connect different dots, if that makes sense.
I strongly believe in what you're saying. If people watch my channel, I think that there's this general idea that we're living this life with five senses on this planet, and that's what we're living. But there is a higher level of consciousness with a greater level of intelligence, more senses. That's another level of that is with accessible
Mm-hmm.
that we can have access to, and perhaps as a part, we're in this some sort of classroom where we're moving up to this point. When we do psychedelics, we're we're temporarily accessing this higher level of consciousness, which, some gurus will say, if we were to access this consciousness now, we would go insane.
Mm-hmm.
Some I've even read some interesting things that propose that portions of the Great Pyramid have an area that you can walk into that is this fourth density consciousness, and they would train people. They would train for long periods of time to think properly, so they wouldn't, when they went into this, they wouldn't go insane, because you start to see what you think out in the immediately. You start thinking of spiders, and spiders are showing up, or even more. When you talk about what you see with DMT, imagine all of that becoming real,
Mm.
right?
Right.
And so I think it is a teaching tool. I think it's like just a way for us to access it. Unfortunately, it's temporary. I
Right.
think we can access the same field that we're accessing with DMT and psychedelics and LSD. And I will almost argue that LSD is more transformative than DMT in my own experience. DMT was temporary, very intense, but LSD, maybe it's because it's longer,
Right.
and maybe I just got some good stuff. you
Well, that's
know.
what people say is, like ayahuasca versus DMT. Like DMT is it's just an awe-inspiring event. It's like being shot out of a
And
cannon.
it goes like
While
that. Right.
ayahuasca, though, is kind of what you're talking about. It's longer.
Right.
You have more time to process things. You have more insights. You have more revelations. That kind of a thing. So I think
Right.
that, yeah, I mean that's probably why your LSD was more insightful. I'm not a big LSD guy. I've obviously done it a fair share in
The
my
the
younger.
speed I don't like, but I like everything
It's
else about it.
it's
Yeah.
just a mind. To me, it was always a heady experience. Which that's cool for some things. But I like psilocybin because you can feel it coursing through your entire body, and it has
Right.
um, obviously therapeutic effects. And with my OCD and depression and stuff like that, I think that you just feel it working, and it allows you to work with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, too, for
Right.
sorting out your issues. So it's not just, none of these things are just a cure all. You can't just take
No.
ayahuasca or take LSD and be like, oh, I'm fine. Quite the contrary. You have to do hard work and put in the time with it like anything else. But
Well, it'll be interesting in Oregon if they start to develop some advanced, now that it's legal, if they can find out, and as they go along, find out some additional ways to make this into a truly therapeutic technique. 2 weeks uh, experimenting with different things. I have a feeling if it does expand and develop like that, it could be just incredible. Being people overcoming depression and never having to take any medication ever again.
yeah, a lot of people have
Or
great success with ketamine too. There's these
hmm
ketamine treatments in clinics now. I think you can even get a ketamine prescription. It's like a nasal spray. It's called like esketamine, I think,
oh wow,
or escamine, something like that.
it's an exciting time in that. I think that
Yeah.
if we let this develop and it doesn't get politicized, which it probably will, then it could transform the world. It
Mm.
really could, if it's done properly and scientifically, safely, so it doesn't, then I think it could be something special. And I think that we're in that process. We're going to reach a point where we can access what we access through these psychedelics, through advanced meditation. That's my belief. I've accessed these fields and had experiences that are psychedelic multiple times as I've gotten better at meditating,
Mm.
mostly through breathing techniques, mostly through certain very advanced breathing techniques that I continued to work on over long periods using yoga techniques or awakening the Kundalini. But I've had this happen, and I do believe that we will start being able to access this without psychedelics. But psychedelics help us to show that it's available, that it's always there.
Right.
right?
And I think though your point about science, yeah, I think we have to at this point it's science is being used as the vehicle to get these things out of, the legality issues and out of the darkness and kind of shed light on what they're capable
Hmm.
of, and they've been around forever, and we've had relationships with these, entheogens and plant medicines and psychoactive compounds since we've been conscious. So if that's the case, I look at everything like cyclical. So like we've had golden eras and all bronze, like different eras throughout time. And I think that what we're doing now is just kind of rediscovering things that we've already known for thousands of years.
Yeah, good
Like
point.
we've had rituals. There's been rituals. The Amazonians, the Shipibo people, and you go to look at the Eleusinian mysteries in ancient Greece. From 1600 BC to 500, whatever,
Hmm.
2000 years this thing was around, and you were only allowed to do it once. So imagine doing psychedelics only once in your life and through some sort of ritual and ceremony, okay? And they're walking you through everything, and you fasted, and there's this ceremonies and rituals, and then you have this awe-inspiring psychedelic experience in the telesterion, which is this amazing structure, in Eleusis, and
Right.
you have this transformative experience where you go, oh, there's more to life, and that's the only time you're allowed to experience it, and that leaves you the rest of your life knowing that there's more to life. And now
Yeah.
we do have the ability to take, there's people that take DMT, and we've had Dick Kahn on. This guy's experimented, done it more than a few hundred times, so
Right.
you look at that, and like we're now relearning what we already knew, and then trying to like push the boundaries even further, in my opinion. So
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited to see how this develops, no doubt about it.
well, I know you only have an hour. Do you want to wrap it up here? I don't know how much time
I
you
got a
got.
couple more minutes.
Okay.
We can go a couple more.
So what do you think about in terms of when you look at all your stuff that you've done with meditation and consciousness and
Hmm.
altered states? Is there something that you've figured out or learned since doing your channel and doing all this extra stuff that maybe you didn't know before, maybe believe in before, but now you do, or there's something that kind of came to light to you, some sort of piece of information that you feel like kind of, blew the roof off this thing?
And not necessarily anything in particular, just uh, an understanding of energy and how it runs through my body and how I interact with it beyond just my fingers and hands holding objects, of how I can manipulate energy and how I'm interacting with energy on different levels. What I always thought chakras were or energy centers is something completely different, almost like centers that accept and radiate and project certain specific kind of energies that are related to levels of consciousness that we're interacting through. And
Mm.
as I've experienced these developing and opening up and connecting, it's changed the way I see the world, the filter that I have on the world, my understanding. And so I've began to, through different yoga techniques and inversion, I've learned how to manipulate and move the energy in my body, and it's a game changer for me to understand that. And also, just in general, the biggest thing that I would go back from it is that um, everything is my. I didn't understand it and completely, and I even say it in the book, but everything that's happening to me is my responsibility. And I've said that, but I maybe didn't understand it until I could really understand it, like everything. And so it's this really powerful mindset to have, even if it's not my responsibility.
Mm.
When you begin to make the choice, I'm going to now say, everything else is my fault. I'm not going to blame anything on anybody else. Nothing else is happening because of anybody else. It's all my fault. When I do that, it empowers me in a certain way. I start acting in a certain way so that I have more control over my life. And so when I combine that understanding with energy, and I'm constantly ramping up my energy, it feels like I'm a magician. It feels
Mm.
like I'm starting to see magic work around me with coincidences and miracles and things that just seem completely insane. And the more insane things that happen, the more I learn not to even acknowledge the insanity of them, to accept them as normal. and that there is a fundamental link between my mind and consciousness to the outside world around me. The matter that is makes up all around me is made up of the same light that runs through me, and I'm I'm connected to it. And so I'm learning that more and more. I didn't understand that, and then definitely come to that conclusion more and more as I move forward.
That's a good point. And I mean, something that I think we could all benefit from is taking a little bit more personal responsibility. And the fact that you own it like that and say, this is me, this is, you
Right.
know, what happens here is something that these are my manifestations, or this is my actions or my energy that
Right.
I'm giving off. And I think that that can help a lot of people, not just personally, but probably in like relationships and stuff too. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that blame other people and blame, you know, this person or that person for their problems. And
Yeah.
I think that you see
Well,
that a
it's hard.
lot, you know,
A lot
especially
of times when I
online.
teach somebody that, it's hard. They don't want to accept that all those terrible things that happen are their own fault.
Mm,
People would almost rather not. They want to have, it's so much easier to blame this politician, this event, this death, this thing on what's happening. And it's hard. Some people simply can't. I will not accept that this is all my fault and all my doing.
I'm guilty of it. I know. I mean, I know I'm guilty.
Everybody is
Yeah. Yeah.
guilty of it.
But I'm
And
saying, like, this is good that we're talking about this, because I'm going to try and start doing that, to be honest with you. I mean, it's easy when you say it, it's like, that sounds so basic, but when you don't think
but
about
it's not.
things, yeah, and when you
Right.
don't think about it on a regular basis, it's hard to start implementing something like
Right.
that.
Like if you're in an Uber and they crash the car, it's my fault. Maybe
Right.
because I chose the Uber or whatever, even though it might not be. That's the biggest thing that some people can't get over. Clearly, that wasn't my fault. Just assume that it is on some level. You'll learn the link to it later. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And when you do that, the world opens up for you because then you have control over things you didn't think you had control over. And even scientific part of you says, no, I don't have control over that, but I do. When you just, it's even if it's a false premise on some level, it's a very empowering premise. And so when you just say, everything is my fault, the wind outside's my fault. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Right. Then suddenly you're starting to change things that you couldn't change before. There's an underlying belief that sort of blocks a lot of people that I believe that we create our reality. So, there's an underlying belief that blocks a lot of people from seeing that we're taught from children all the way through school, that we don't have control, that these things are outside of our control, that we're just living in a random universe, that everything is happening randomly, and we're just hoping today that a tornado doesn't come down on our house, because if it did, it wouldn't have anything to do with us, and we're just living in a random world. There could be a car accident tomorrow.
Mm.
So there's something like that, and if you change that, there's something else that happens. There's some kind of change that happens in the way that you think about things. And the actions that you take once you start doing that are profound. And you'll start to change things, even if it's not true, which is
Mhm.
what I always like to, even if it's not true, just forget about it. Just accept that it's true for now. Trust me when I tell you that. When you do this, then suddenly you're going to have a better life. And isn't that ultimately what we want to do? It's okay to have false premises if they lead to a better life. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, look, those are some great insights, and I think that can help a lot of people. And I think that like I said, I'm going to try and implement that. And I think that I think about those things in meditation, but meditation's in my opinion, it's similar to psychedelics in the way that when you come out of it, you don't have that full feeling or full picture that you did. So like I try and write stuff down, similar
Right.
to what I do with my trips. You know, while I'm in the middle of a trip, I might even jot some things down, some ideas. Some of them don't make sense, but afterwards.
Right.
But yeah,
Well, going back to Neville Goddard, his idea is that imagination is God. So
mm,
when you're sitting in imagination, that's God right there. So if that's true, then we have an opportunity to intermingle. The thoughts coming through our mind are not your thoughts; they're God's thoughts, right?
right.
So you're interacting with that. You might not remember everything, but there's something about that.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's weird that you say that. We did a trip report episode. I think I mentioned it on that, but I had a psilocybin experience in darkness where I was meditating
Yeah.
where I was told by something or some force or whatever, this is the
Yeah.
realm of pure imagination. And it made sense in the sense that I could think about whatever I wanted in that moment that was original, and it had no ties to anything in day to day consciousness or anything
Right.
like that. So I was in this magical realm of just pure imagination. And that might be, if there is, a creator or God force or whatever, that might be it, or that might be part of it,
That
because I think,
definitely a part of it.
isn't part of our role is just things to create. Like if you look at like what we
Right.
do, we create, and a lot of it's influenced off of the past and other people and this and that. But I think we hold people that are truly creative and truly original up on a higher level, because it is hard to achieve that.
Right. But they're not creating. They're just accessing the imagination
Right.
of the creator, and they're becoming a vessel for that imagination.
Well,
So
people are tapping into something.
they're tapping
Tesla,
into something,
Steve
right?
Jobs, and I think,
Right?
even LSD and coming up with the iPad and iPhone and all that stuff. So,
Everything, yeah. Everything around us is a result of our imagination, and that imagination could be God. And if it is, that's a really exciting thing. That means God's right there right now. You can just close your eyes and God's right there in your imagination. God's not, may for most of us, is not going to speak words
well, even
that
the
we
word
hear.
God invokes a
It invokes a
bearded
feeling right away.
Zeus, a bearded Zeus-like guy sitting
Right.
up on the fluffy clouds playing
Right.
a harp. Like, and
So that,
when I think of God, I don't think of that, but I think that
right.
most people, when you say that, that's the taboo of it, right? Of the word, is that
Right.
there's this magical sky daddy that's pulling all the strings, good,
Right.
bad, and indifferent. And reality is, God could be part of our subconscious, or like you said, the realm of imagination or creativity or
Right.
the life force, whatever it is. I think we're all
Well, as
connected
Neville
somehow.
Goddard would explain
Yeah.
it, everything is God. So there's nothing that is not God. God is in everything. So God is the devil. God is the devil. God is everybody. So you and I are individual versions of God. You and I are the same person. You and I are God, right? That's how Neville Goddard would explain it. All of life, any living thing is God, any object is God, all of it is
So is
God.
that
If you,
pandeism or pantheism? It's one of those,
I
right?
don't know if there would be, his word for it is that we chose to individualize from God and go through this process on earth of living all these incarnations, because we become something way, way better. And we continue to be an individualized version of God. God uses this as a sort of a process. It feels like God wants to give us the God power, but we need to learn how to use it. So like we're taking instructions right now, because it'd be pretty devastating if we don't use it with love, and there's laws that are involved in it, and so we're sort of on a but how it's like the thought adjuster in your rancho, right? There is something in you that is from the source, right? Could be. He claims that God is asleep in our skull, right? So that it awakens at some point, but is just dreaming the world around us, and at some point we become aware and we awaken that, oh yeah, we are God. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it's
Mm-hmm.
very enticing and interesting the way that Neville Goddard reads, using scripture to justify it, saying that's what the Bible says, saying all the characters in the Bible are the same person. They're all you. They're all different. Abraham is a version of you. All of the different characters are different versions of you. And so that's why scripture is good. It's not some historical document, because it's not historically true, but it's a divine document talking about all the different states of you. And so it's
Yeah.
enticing and interesting to think about.
And I just want to point out, because we did poo-poo the Urantia papers when
Okay.
we found out about
I just mentioned that because I know you've
No, I
read it,
know,
so
but
I
I
was
just want
trying
to point
to.
that out. Sadler, the guy who was associated with the creation of the Urantia papers, was also talking about eugenics, and I think wrote a book on it. So that's obviously
But
bad.
did not talk about eugenics in the Urantia. He wrote it
No,
separately,
so apparently we
right?
had a
So,
guest that brought up book 4 and 5. There's some questionable things in the book. I haven't read those
yeah.
parts of the book, so I can't speak to that. But I did look into it, and there are some things in there, like the parts that initially reading it I didn't know, but when I went back and looked, there
Right.
were some things that
And I only
yes.
mention that because I know it's you and I have both had knowledge of it. So I was trying to give you an
No,
example.
no, and I
You know what I'm
understand that, but I
saying?
do want to point that out, because I
Okay.
don't want to be people thinking because we did poo-poo it and talked about, but whatever, things come up like you mentioned. It's hard to separate some things sometimes, because where you might see all the things about like love and light and all these
Right,
wonderful
right.
things, there are some like underlying things of the times, and you can even do that with like our founding fathers, and like
Well, the argument you can make
founding
on your
fathers having
rancha
like
is that
slaves and
it
being
was people.
racist.
Right. On Urantia, you can make the argument that the material in Urantia is channeled, and that his book on eugenics was not from those channeled entities. Could say that. I need to read the other sources, but there is lots of stuff, as I say in my video on it, that I just don't vibe with or don't agree with. It sort of, Urantia sort of separates God from us. It says there's a God paradise somewhere out there
Right.
that's creating everything, sort of, in a way. So that's always been the thing that I didn't like about it, because it sort of separates. And I don't believe that God's some dude sitting on a throne with a long beard that's way out there. It's within us.
Old Zeusy.
Right. But it's
But
fun
yeah,
to
no,
talk about,
no,
right?
no. Look, these things are important to talk about, because we have talked about these things with you too. And if something comes up, we like the episode we had with David Matheson on, like, yeah, I had no idea about that, but when I looked into it, I'm like, oh shit, we've talked about this a lot, and this guy does talk about some fucked up things, the guy that created it. So, yeah, we're
Right.
not going to talk about that anymore. Not necessarily,
So the story on William Sadler is he's this doctor that's in
Right.
Chicago, right? And then somebody calls him up and says, "We got this patient, and we don't know what the hell's going on. This guy's a stockbroker, a total normal businessman, but he's sitting there saying all this crazy stuff." So they all start showing up and they start writing it down, right?
Right.
And so that's how the beginning works of it. And then a group of them continue to start getting these sessions from multiple different people that were talking about along the same lines. So William Sadler might be a total asshole, right?
Right.
And so he might have been documenting what was happening. There may be a separation between the two. A lot of
Well,
people.
okay, so
during
this
that
is where
time,
the real conversation would come in then. Is it
right?
because if Sadler didn't write it, or the words weren't coming from him,
Who wrote it?
who wrote it? But there are still questionable race things in the Urantia paper. Again, I haven't read through the whole parts 4 and 5, but I know
I'd
that
like to
there.
go, and if you remember, your rancher has the beginning. It says each entity that channeled that section,
Yeah.
like Melchizedek is one, and they have an angel that does. I'd like to go and read the ones that are talking about that and who is the entity that channeled that. I'd like to find that out. I have read the book going on against Urantia. There's a guy that wrote a book about it, and there's some other people. There's some stuff. Also, the newer Urantia stuff doesn't seem authentic. They have some newer channelings where they're channeling sources, and it just seems clearly like fake. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Sure.
seem legitimately. So, but
Well, look,
um,
I mean, here's the thing that caught my attention of it initially was like the syntax and like the structure of, the way that it's written, and how could
Right.
they know about certain scientific things before those things came to fruition, and, the mainstream. And, but yeah, again, Sadler probably actually is most likely an asshole, and a
Right.
product of his time and thinking and outdated views and flaws and things like that, and having racist thoughts, obviously. And again, a lot of, you go back to the founding fathers, there's a lot of things that are built on those ideas that are wrong, and now we know they're wrong. Back then, I mean, who knows?
Right.
Your consciousness evolves. It's always been wrong, and when we look back, but, for those guys, who knows what they were thinking? And that's the tough part about talking about all this historical texts and documents and stuff like that.
Well, I'm
But
hopeful. And when I read and I interview with Jim McCarty with the Law of One, there's this concept that we are going to move into and become a social memory complex, that the Akashic record will become a conscious living thing that we will integrate with. And there will be a point where we can access the incarnations of everybody on Earth slowly. And it's something that normally happens on any planet, sort of group mind forms that you interact with individually. And so there'll be a point maybe in the future where we know the history, not because we read about it on the internet or something, but we just know. And that we'll start to get more and more information It might be super slow. It might be hundreds of years. You do see like people reacting more fervently now on TV when something happens. It's
Mm-hmm.
because of a personal connection. When some injustice happens in the past, it was like, oh, that's just something on TV. Now it's like you feel like it's happening to you.
Right.
There's a connection happening. So wouldn't it be exciting? There's some point in the future where we all know. We start to the Akashic sort of unveils, and slowly you meet your friend, and you know everything about your friend, like everything about your friend, and it's kind of a natural thing, and then slowly everybody just knows everything. There'll be a point in time. I would think that would be incredibly exciting and interesting, possibly a bad thing, but
Right.
right? But that's what
Yeah.
they discuss is the next level, is this social memory complex that forms,
Well, it's
right?
interesting you bring it up too, because I feel like with the internet, that is kind of what's going on, and like this,
The internet's the
the
beginning of it,
the
is what
internet
they have
has
to
made
say.
us aware of like, oh, these aren't myths of problems. These are real problems that are happening right now that do
Right.
affect all of us, and that's why, like I said, it's important to point out. Sadler was a racist, and the Urantia Papers has some questionable shit in there. Like things like that. I think it's important to
Of
like
course.
point
Yeah.
those things out because now we know. Now this isn't 1920, 1930. We do have resources. We do have ways to check up on things. There is Wikipedia. There is Google. So
Right.
and again, how do you separate the art from art? Like how many artists and musicians and
Right.
even athletes have done terrible things and people still hold them in higher regard, So
Right.
I know they had uh, you know, um who was it? Uh I don't know, I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, just think of anybody that's done anything terrible that's been in the spotlight, and then you still have fans of those people. So
Right.
yeah, I know people still listen to uh, you know, all the greats that have done messed up terrible. Even like Ty Cobb, right? Didn't he
Right.
supposedly kill somebody or something? So
All of our heroes end up falling at some point, it feels like, and then there's still people that support them. So,
and nobody's perfect, but at the same
right.
time, I think that there are like levels of fucked up shit that people have done. So
Right.
but yeah, I mean, it's an interesting conversation. Like I said, we can. That's a whole different topic too. Is like
For sure.
separating somebody's art or somebody's research or work from the terrible ideas that they might have had themselves. So,
Right.
but yeah, so let's wrap it up there. Is there anything
All right.
else you want to
No,
plug
just
or?
thanks for having me on. Thanks for supporting me from the beginning and helping me out with my channel. I owe you. Thank you so much.
Dude, you don't owe me. I was just being a nice
I
guy, and then you did it
appreciate it.
yourself, man. It was your original
Oh, but
ideas. Here's the thing: is nobody on YouTube is just gonna. You don't just like spring into stardom. Like you have to have something that's not there, or that like a service or something that people want or something valuable to people. So it's
right.
your meditation, your guided meditations. No, people aren't putting out 2 videos a day. You put out 2 videos a day. That's insane. So.
Just one a day.
Oh, do you?
Maybe two.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
tempted.
All
I
right.
could. I have some backlog, but I've always tried to keep it to one.
But like, okay, so, but for that part, you are pumping out material, and I think people
Right.
appreciate that, and people can count on that. And if you've had a bad day, and you know that there's going to be a meditation, or, you can fix that. And look, the whole thing is let's love. Let's bring people together. Let's, everybody. Let's all get on the same page, and let's turn this thing around. It's been a
Let's
rough
do it.
year.
We can do it.
It's been a rough year for everybody, and I think that we can all heal, and we can all fix this thing, and we can come together, through the knowledge of the ancients on top of the modern weird stuff that we're doing to achieve, new ideas and techniques and things like that. So check out the Reality Revolution book, check out therealityrevolution.com, which is Brian's website. And if you have not already, go to the Reality Revolution YouTube channel and subscribe there, because I do love the meditations, and he's got a bunch of stuff on. You've got interviews, you've got lots of stuff on there, so people should go check that out. And one more time, I'm going to give a shout out to our patrons too. So we have a few new patrons I want to give a shout out to. We have Matt from Delaware, who's actually kind of pushed me along, and I got a few other emails too, but he kind of inspired me to create some new Patreon platforms and create a little community on Discord and stuff like that. So shout out to Matt from Delaware. Also, shout out to Laser Printer Jam. I don't know what your real name is, but we love you. And Wendy and Corey and Jeff Nash. So shout out to all of you. We love you. Appreciate it. Thank you for supporting the show. Again, here's all the new tiers. You can sign up and go through our Patreon. Sign up for one of the tiers for $2 a month. You'll get all of the exclusive guest episodes, and we are going to be doing secret episodes going forward. So I'm not going to give out any information. I'm not going to let you know what guests or what the topic is or what's going on. There might be some crazy new innovation type stuff happening with that. So go check that out. And one more time, head on over to Indra's Web. We'll try and get Brian on there here at some point too when it's live. indrasweb.org, and sign up to get an alert when the app goes live. The app is designed for rational discourse. Me and a buddy created it. We were just waiting for all this, all the news coverage and all the crazy stuff that's been happening to die down a little bit, which it seems like hopefully it's going to here going into the new year. And that's it. Thank you again, Brian, and we'll have you on again in the future, maybe when Maurice is back here, if he ever comes back. Oh, I
appreciate it.
I just want to point out, too, somebody did make a comment on our Apple saying that, is Maurice hostage? Let him talk. We might make some T-shirts at some point that says, let Maurice talk, okay? Because Maurice has been able to talk the whole time. He can talk whenever he wants.
He's a good listener.
He's a good listener, and that's his decision. So don't come at me with this let Maurice bullcrap, okay? We've done episodes for just him. What we might do in the future is let him host an episode, which will be interesting. So,
yeah.
All right. Thank you all. We love you. Stay safe out there, and peace.